Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I am back again today doing another video. And the subject of today's video is going to be discussing popular movies, or I should say actually unpopular movies that I love. So these are movies that in general uh, people don't enjoy, they don't speak highly of. They were either disappointments at the box office or people think that they basically just are not as good as they should have been, or they think that for what they are, they're highly overrated. A plethora of different reasons. I'll get into the reason for why each movie is unpopular when I talk about it, but they're basically just, yeah, disliked movies for some reason or another that I really enjoy. And so, without further ado, let's get into it. The first movie I have on here is a really cheesy one and really hammy. It's Con Air from 1997 with Nicolas Cage and John Cusack. It basically, the premise is a bunch of criminals hijack a plane that they're riding on, and they're led by John Malkovich. And Nick Cage is a fellow prisoner, but he's about to get free, and he's actually a really moral guy for various reasons. And basically, he's trying to stop the plane hijacking. A lot of the criminals are really over the top. There's a big cast of big names actually between the three I already mentioned and Ving Rhames and Steve Buscemi and Danny Trejo. A lot of notable actors in this movie. And honestly, I think that they realized when they made it that they were being kind of ridiculous with a lot of the different things that they put in this movie. There's a lot of stupid lines like Nicolas Cage says something like "Give me the bunny" before he like viciously shoots a guy to death, which it just is like a line that doesn't seem like it would fit there and is obviously really goofy when you contrast it to the situation that was at hand. Um, and yeah, I think it's really trying hard to be a serious action movie, but over time it's definitely aged into a really goofy, actually funny movie, just at how serious it's taking itself. Um, and I know people who really dislike it. It's not got a very high rating. It's mid 50s on Rotten Tomatoes. Nick Cage is really over the top, and he does a southern accent that's it's actually okay, but in that he keeps consistent with it, but the accent itself just sounds ridiculous and not believable. But he is consistent with keeping it up throughout the movie, which is to some extent impressive, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know why. I actually don't really like action movies very much at all, but I do like this one just because how hammy it is and how over the top it is with a lot of the acting and a lot of the plot points. And also, it was on a ton on TV. It's always on, I feel like. It's one of the movies that a lot of TV channels must have the rights to, so it gets played a lot. And for those reasons, altogether, just growing up and even now, I still really enjoy it. I saw it on TV one time when I was at the gym or something, and I just got on a bike and watched most of it while it was on. I don't know why. It's just one I really enjoy. Um, Next, a controversial one in the superhero fan club community. I always have liked Spider-Man 3. This is the one starring Tobey Maguire and that whole trilogy. If you need your memory jogged, a lot of people criticized it for being too jam-packed, for being too over the top, for Tobey Maguire being so nerdy in the role. But to me, it worked because I'm not. I'm when I was going into this movie, I wasn't expecting anything really, I think. And I just liked the trilogy as it was so far. And when it came out, as a kid going to this movie, what more would you want than a super stuffed movie with a ton of villains and maybe all of the retconning with like Sandman killing Uncle Ben doesn't really make sense, but I think as a kid I really liked just how jam-packed it was with stuff going on. So for that reason I like the movie. If you don't know, it was a widespread thing that Sam Raimi actually wanted a fourth Spider-Man movie, but the studio said, "Nah, you're gonna have to just put what you want in number 4 into number 3." And then that's really why Sandman, or excuse me, not Sandman, that's really why Venom is wedged into this movie. He was supposed to be the big bad guy for a fourth film, but the studio canceled that, so Sam Raimi had to throw him into this one. Um, and as far as like the things that people hate, as far as like Peter acting super weird when he has the black suit on, the Venom suit, I think that yes, he does act super nerdy and ridiculous, but like for that version of the sweet innocent Peter Parker, that sort of snarky dick to women is like exactly what he would think of as being like an evil person. Like, because when you think like other versions of Venom, like the evil side of the person, like goes around killing people and stuff like that, but like Peter Parker's evil version of himself is just a, a guy who like looks at women, and probably is just more of a douche than he would normally be. But he's not like going around killing people for no reason like other versions of Venom. But yeah, overall, it's just really exactly what I would think of as a campy superhero movie, and I think it wasn't taking itself too seriously. And so for those reasons, I've always enjoyed it, and I just like Tobey Maguire the best of the Spider-Men. The third film I have on here is Troy, which is a movie from 2004 starring Brad Pitt and Eric Bana and Sean Bean and a lot of others like Peter O'Toole and Orlando Bloom. It's about the Trojan War. So let me get right off the bat. It's highly inaccurate historically as far as what the actual Greek mythology is around this story. There's a lot of inaccuracies in this movie. And again, another action movie, but and I don't normally like action movies, but this is actually not just a movie I like, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Probably my favorite action movie, so to speak. It's all like Greek, it's all Greek fighting and stuff like that. So it's like knights and or like soldiers, shields, swords, spears, that kind of fighting. I don't know, there's just something mesmerizing about watching the war aspect of it to me, and like how these sides strategize and go at each other in different tactics. And I think actually one of the things that makes me like this movie the best is of all the different fight scenes I've seen in different movies and stuff as far as sword fighting and just general combat. I think there's a one-on-one fight in this, and if you've seen the movie, you're gonna know what I'm talking about. Between Eric Bana's character Hector and Brad Pitt's character Achilles, and it is one of the best choreographed, most suspenseful fight scenes I've ever seen. Even when I know the result of it, because I've seen the movie tons of times, I know exactly what's gonna happen. But even when I'm watching it, I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm tense just because of how well the scene is choreographed, even just like the music and the cinematography involved, they really convey a sense of tension, and that just conveys a really well done scene when even if you've seen the movie 100 times, you think this time when I'm watching it there might be a different result. That's a really well done scene. Um, Besides that, yes, there are some choppy dialogue and acting at some parts, and sometimes the acting can be a little wooden from Brad Pitt and others. But overall, I think just because I like the Greek mythology aspect, this is one of my favorite films. But overall, I should reiterate, these are movies that I normally wouldn't like with my taste, and this movie was supposed to be like an Oscar contender, and it definitely fell way short. It only was around 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, which they were hoping for like 85, so that definitely fell short for them. But overall, yeah, for some reason, I can't tell you why, it's just one of my favorite all-time movies. Next, I'm going a little bit off the beaten trail and a little bit different than the rest. I'd say the first three I had on here are more like action heavy, adventure slash action movies in general. And these next ones I'm going to be talking about are more just like serious dramas, Oscar contenders. The first is Scent of a Woman. Now, let me be clear, Scent of a Woman was nominated for Best Picture, I believe. It won Al Pacino an Oscar for Best Actor. But overall, it's widely considered to be not that good of a movie by a lot of film critics I've listened to. I've listened to a lot of different podcasts, read different articles, listened to YouTubers on it, and a lot of them, when they talk about The Scent of a Woman, they just say Al Pacino shouldn't have won his Oscar for that movie. He should have won it for something else. Or they say, besides Al Pacino's acting, that movie is garbage. And I I disagree. It's a long movie. I think it's 2.5 hours. Um, Al Pacino is definitely the bright spot of it. There's other good aspects, but he definitely carries it. I don't think that it's fair to say that he should have won for something else. He did a really good job in this movie, and I think his performance stands up to performances he had in other movies just as well. He conveys a very wide range of emotions in the movie. He gives us some of the best one-liners of all time. His character is super snappy and harsh, and he does yell a lot. This is kind of when Al Pacino transitioned into the more yelling roles of his career, which like post 1995, that seems like every other role he did. He's just yelling for no reason. Sadly, this is when that trend started because he did a lot of yelling in this movie, but it's not bad when he does it in this movie either. A lot of people criticize it of being sort of like a Hallmark kind of movie, where if you replace Al Pacino with a more generic, no-name actor, this could have been a movie on the Hallmark Channel or something like that. I disagree in that I think Chris O'Donnell, who would go on to be the new Robin in the Batman movies, and he would go on to have his own TV show and stuff like that. He actually brings really subtle, really good acting here as well, along with a lot of little bit parts from different characters, along with Philip Seymour Hoffman's first movie. If you didn't know that, fun fact: 1992, Scent of Woman, Philip Seymour Hoffman's first movie. And yeah, I personally I think Al Pacino does a really good job with this character and definitely warranted an Oscar. So it's a movie that people often call overrated, and I think that it's not overrated in the slightest. And if anything, it's underrated now because people uh, talk talk crap about it so much and give it so much flack. And lastly, the movie The Color of Money, which is very similar to the last one that I just mentioned. It's a movie about an older gentleman and a younger man who he kind of takes under his wing. This one is a sequel to the movie The Hustler, which is from 1963. This one is from 1986. It revolves around Paul Newman and Tom Cruise. Paul Newman, of course, in the first movie, he is a pool shark called Eddie Felson, and in this movie he's reprising that role, but instead of being like 20, he's like a 55-year-old, and or something around that. Instead of being 25, he's like 50, and he's not playing pool as much anymore, as now he's uh, being a staker for Tom Cruise, or like a backer, which means that like Tom Cruise goes out and plays these games, and basically Paul Newman is his manager slash like puts up the money to support Tom Cruise when he wants to bet somebody in a game. Uh, Paul Newman kind of like provides the insurance money in case he loses a match. Um, Paul Newman turns in a very versatile, subtle, very good performance. This is another one where he won his first Oscar for this movie, but people were saying he should have won it for other things. And I think, yes, he was deserving for other performances, but he definitely deserved it for this one as well and did a really good job. And I think Hollywood isn't super fond of the plot line of teach an old dog new tricks because they never seem to really reward it at the Oscars. They did for this movie, they did for Scent of a Woman, but in retrospect nowadays people seem to really dislike it, and the only times it's ever won is in cases like these where people think that the actor maybe didn't deserve it. I think he definitely did. I think he just gives a very subtle, again, very nuanced performance, and I think he just perfectly embodies the whole can you teach an old dog new tricks concept in film form. And it has one of the best closing scenes of all time to me. um, and the whole movie kind of builds up to um, it kind of builds up to Paul Newman taking up pool again, because if you're familiar with the plot lines at all, basically at the end of The Hustler, which is the first movie, he kind of swears off pool for the time being, and so then in this movie, like 25 years later, he at the very end of the film, he decides to pick up pool again for the first time in all those years, and it culminates in a climax, and then there's like an ending scene that I think is really good. Definitely the pain point of this movie is Tom Cruise's performance. He's way over the top. He's really obnoxious in it, but I think Paul Newman does enough to neutralize that obnoxiousness with his pretty reserved, pretty good performance. So definitely worth the watch. And this one and the Scent of a Woman, they both had really high ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, like 88 and 89. So obviously they were really liked when they came out, and still liked by a lot of people, but in the film critic community, I see them catching a lot of flack, which I think is undeserved. That's all I got for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned a few things. Leave below some movies that are unpopular that you really enjoy, and I'll hear from you next time. Bye.